Well, Baltic World, I'm Charlene.
I'm Crispin.
Our week in review, Baltic World is Primary Channel. We discuss important issues facing Northern, Central and Eastern Europe. But we begin, where are we, Crispin?
We are in Romania. We're deep in the Transylvanian mountains and plain, and we are in the city of Deva, which is about 5 to 10 kilometers away from Hunedoara, which has one of my all-time favourite castles, Hunedoara Castle, also known as Corvinus Castle. We ducked out of Estonia straight down to Budapest, and we've taken the train into Romania, but we will be back in the Baltic in just a few days' time. How are you finding this part of the world, Charlene?
If to be honest, warmer as we are heading more south. And also, it's just really interesting. The architecture is different. There are more like, you call them hills, but I'm like, they look like mountains. Everyone's quite friendly as well. But yeah, much older. I don't know. I have an older feel to it.
Yeah, so
it's not modernized as much as the Baltic is. So
that's right. So of course, we wanted to compare and contrast some of the former occupied countries in Central and Eastern Europe, of course, Hungary, Romania, all under the yoke of Soviet control during the Cold War, and how things have developed since that time. And one of the things that has really started out in terms of the Baltic countries is that since the independence, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, these countries have powered forward and transformed themselves in quite dramatic ways. In fact, comparing Estonia to Romania is quite stark. However, I came to Romania literally the same day, and we'll get into that, but literally the same day in Romania 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've been going to some of the same places.
Yeah.
And it's been utterly transformed there as well. So even though the Baltic countries have powered ahead, they're known as the Baltic Tigers for a reason, the Romanians have also done much to transform their economy and their society. So we are at the cusp, I think, of a great flowering in Eastern Europe. And yeah, I mean, I'm actually experiencing a bit of a culture shock coming back to Romania, because last time I came, it was for a sort of rite of passage. This was the absolute backwater of the world. There was no development. Everything had crumbled. Basically no infrastructure development since the end of the Cold War. And
then now, you prepared me with all these stories that you shared, and then we go to Romania, and there's a shopping centre, and I'm like, this is Australia? This is pretty modern.
Oh, that freaked me out.
So, and a bus stop with proper buses running, and
absolutely. So we arrived from Budapest into Arad, which is in the far west of Romania, and we intended. This was a kind of a true Romanian experience, to be fair. We were intending to go to this massive star fortress, Arad Fortress, which is a great fortress built by Maria Theresa of the Austrian Empire. And I saw photos of it before I came here from the air, thinking, wow, this would be great. I haven't actually seen a well-preserved star fort, so I wanted to come visit it with my own eyes. And there was a bit of a problem, wasn't there, Charlene?
Yeah. Well, I Googled it and it came up on Google Maps. I was like, oh yeah, there's a picture, like a photo thing. I was like, oh, it's a tourist centre. It's fine. So we walk there, and we're like, where's the signage? There's no one here. And then Crispin pointed out military base as a signage. We're like, surely not. But then he was like, would it be great to have a drone and we'll find out where the entrance is?
Well, look, I mean, it made sense at the time. We can't find out where to go, and I have this thing that can give me aerial footage.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah. So, as two typical tourists, we go find a car park and fly the drone near a military site, and
some strange things started happening. So, I mean, when you fly a drone, often you get warnings of various kinds, right? Yeah. So I wasn't paying much attention. It was the first time I had flown in Romania. We just crossed the border. And sometimes you get wind warnings and flight path warnings and things. You just got to be careful. And so when the warnings popped up, I didn't really pay any attention.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's typical. It's automated.
Yeah, it all came up straight away. And so it didn't stop me taking off, right? Which, if it's a severe thing, you'd expect that.
But it had a height limit.
It did. I couldn't fly above 60 meters, which is a bit of a pain when you're trying to get an image of where this starfort is. But it was still, high in the sky. And as soon as I started flying it, I started getting extra warnings, like please return, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, yeah, whatever. So I just went kind of a bit of a loop, nothing crazy. And eventually I lost contact with the drone. It got zapped. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. So eventually it let me reconnect after about 10, 15 seconds. At which point I started getting some additional warnings.
Yes, you did. So it was like, patience. Like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to move it over there to the city. And then another warning.
Yeah, they were like, that's not okay. Right? And so what was happening is on my controller, messages were actually being written up. So normally when you get a warning, it just appears, wind warning, tower warning, height warning, whatever. Yeah. Whereas little letters were appearing written out as if someone was typing. And I was like, okay, this is a little bit different. Anyway, so I kept flying for a little bit. And then it came up, patience reached, which was at that point I realized actually the military base is communicating with me in real time, telling me to get my drone out of their airspace. So I immediately flew it back.
Yeah, you could hear Crispin. He was like, oh my God, so yes, I get it. Go back. And then here I freak out, like, oh my God, it's going to get shot down. Poor Biscuit. The drone's named Biscuit. I'm like, please, Biscuit, survive.
But it actually fixed a problem, or seems to have temporarily. So when they zapped it, because I was having a serious problem with the gimbal motor. In fact, we took it into a repair shop in Tallinn because we're having real trouble controlling the camera. And they couldn't see anything wrong with it. So we're like, shrug, hopefully it fixes itself. And we're having the same sort of problem as I was flying it over this fort. But then when they zapped it and I lost contact and then reconnected, it somehow reset itself. So thanks, Romanian military, for hopefully giving a permanent fix to the drone and for not shooting it down when you absolutely had a right to do so. Yeah. But it was really interesting. We got a new experience of how anti-drone weapons work. It was extremely effective against my drone, and I think they could have easily taken control of it if they wanted to. Yeah. And they could communicate through my immediate device. So quite ingenious, really. We'll put up some footage of ARID for interest, but obviously none of the restricted space. We don't want to push our luck, given that they didn't actually shoot down our drone in the end. And good thanks to the Romanian military. I think that I looked it up afterwards because obviously I was like, what's going on here? What is this place? And apparently it's a joint Romanian-Hungarian battalion that has been there since 1999. Now, I have a personal view about whether or not they should perhaps relinquish that space because it is potentially an extraordinary tourist attraction. In fact, it was the reason we were going there.
And it's so proximate to the city. Like, we walked there. So I was like, oh, surely it's like nothing, out of the ordinary. And then, there was full-on military base. Can't go get it. We even try to walk around to see if we can get a good view. Nothing. It was all these trees to cover it. And I was like, Crispin, what am I trying to look at? But that's okay.
And we'll put a picture up of the actual fort because there is a photo online of it from the air, and you can see why we wanted to go there. It's gorgeous, theoretically, but it's just being occupied by a battalion, and given the economic benefit to that surrounding area for people being able to go to such a well-preserved site, it would be good just to move them elsewhere. And Charlene is right. It's right there in the city, so it does interfere with other things that might be useful in that airspace. The drone would have been great for taking tourist shots for that region. So
but they were definitely on our tail because we didn't see anybody around until we left, and then there was a guard right at the front walking up and down and being like, where are the two tourists?
We just walked past nonchalantly.
Not with this guy.
So that's the about the 8,000th time we almost lost the drone, although that was probably the most dramatic.
It was, definitely.
But we've moved on since then. We got on a train.
Yep, so now we're in Deva, and then we just visited Hunedora's castle. And this was my first ever castle, so I'm really happy. It was majestic. I was surprised, right? Like, before you were saying, it's middle of nowhere, it's almost undiscovered, and it still kind of is. There's still a lot of industrial things around, not many people talk about it. The signage is completely outdated. In fact, it's probably, the sun's shining and damaging all the advertising about the castle. So it was amazing. They're doing a little refurbishment for the castle. And we got there early. So it's Monday, and apparently on Mondays, no one wakes up until 12 o'clock. So we were like, where is it? Where's the entrance? It is not. We don't open yet. So then the drone came out.
And there was no restriction flying around. It was no warning, no nothing, which is actually rare because you usually get some kind of warning if it's just a weather hazard.
Yeah.
And absolutely ideal conditions, extraordinary footage. I think the shots that we got of, and we will get them up at some point, probably not this video, maybe a teaser, but
maybe a teaser, yeah. This is prime footage.
This is probably the best footage we've ever taken with the drone, and it absolutely smashes the aerial photographs they have as their own display. So perhaps even we could provide some better footage than what the municipality of Hunadora actually has to promote that castle. But when you were like during the Ceausescu era, Hunadora was a chemical factory. It was a strip mine, like completely torn to pieces. And if this was anywhere else, Hunadora would have an entire city built up around it for the purposes of advertising this central structure. And I compare it to Traki in Lithuania, which is definitely a major location we'll be going to in the next few days. Traki is this beautiful castle in the middle of a gorgeous lake. It has all of the wonderful stores, the restaurants, the little boats going around. Perfect, serene situation. And of course, Lithuania was also occupied by the Soviets. So Lithuania just had a different attitude, I think, towards its cultural heritage and its sort of natural gift. Whereas Ceausescu of Romania, a crazy dictator, just ran roughshod over the whole thing. So even now, as Charlene says, Hunadora Castle is somewhat undiscovered. It certainly plays second fiddle to Bran Castle in Brasov, which I don't think is justified at all. I think Hunadora is one of the great castles of the world. And I was so pleased to go back there. It was really charming. But even when the bus pulls up to a station, and then it's still a lengthy walk.
You have to walk, and then you can kind of see it in the background. But yeah, we're walking past all these big long trucks, heavy vehicles, smoke going everywhere,
auto factory. Yeah, just smelters, And
then you see a sign that says castle, and that's it. Nothing else. Nothing overselling. And it's okay, blah, 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 blah. And then as we pull up close, you're like, whoa, this is a castle. It's majestic, but it's surrounded by factories. But that's okay. I mean, it has unrealized potential, and it's going there. It's clear that when you went, they said there was nothing there, right, 15 years ago. Now it's almost like a museum. They're working towards that.
Yeah, they're definitely investing in it. And there was some refurbishment going on when we went there, but it has lost some of its intrepid appeal in a way, because when I went there last time, because there was nobody interested in going to this castle. And the only reason I knew about the castle was because I heard about it in some novel, and it had a little disclaimer at the bottom of the novel that says, you actually can see this castle is a real thing. And so that was my going off in the middle of nowhere. And when I went there, I could just get the run of the castle. It was run down, but if you could get anywhere in the castle, there's no security, no safety features or anything. You had to climb up into little hidey holes. And I could climb up into a booth and just look out the window with my legs dangling out, writing in a journal. It felt like an abandoned building, but now they've actually turned it into something that attracts tourists. And it's obviously going to be preserved and generate revenue, and it has to happen that way. But it's not the same as when I, discovered it all those years ago.
Yeah. Sorry, Crispin, but not every attraction should be climbed, and I think you could have fell out of the castle if you could do that.
Yes, I could have easily hurt myself, and invariably somebody will. Like if you allow small children to climb up into things.
And there's like this well, I put it in. There's like this well, like it's so deep. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a very well made castle. It's like actually held up for all these centuries. Yeah,
because there's that cool bridge that goes across, and then you're like, I'm going to Hogwarts. So
yeah, but this is one of it's really indicative of the difference between the Baltic countries for me and Romania, and just the general most countries under the Eastern Bloc. The Baltic countries have done everything possible, I think, to preserve their natural inheritance, their language, their culture. And Romania, I think, is still trying to find its way. Romanians, generally speaking, are talking about how much better it is elsewhere. There's all in the news. You hear about the brain drain of people leaving. That said, when we're looking at the economic statistics, Romania has gone through a huge revival in recent years. Incomes have increased. Yeah. So hopefully things are turning around for this country. And of course, the Carpathian Mountains is absolutely beautiful. We haven't gone deep into them yet. Charlene hasn't seen the sort of snow-capped peaks and the waterfalls and any of that yet. But we've only got a few more days here, and then we'll be back in the Baltic. Yeah. I don't rate Bucharest myself. I haven't spent much time there, but I was like, okay, for a capital city, the beauty of Romania is in the rural areas. Whereas in the Baltic countries, all the cities are just as nice as the rural landscape. So looking forward to getting back up there. And the weather has definitely turned.
Yes, I know. And that's also one of the reasons why we kind of swapped. Well, there's a couple of reasons, right? Obviously Easter, all these Christianized countries, we celebrate Easter to see their family. We want to meet up with a few people. People mentioned we are doing a meetup coming in Vilnius and maximize our time there. And then, secondly, springtime, you want to get the best footage possible. We're halfway around the world. But winter's so cool. It's kind of interesting. Going in April, it's wild weather, definitely. But I've got to see every single season. So, I feel very fortunate in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's basically for the footage purposes. Once we get back there, hopefully it'll be permanently above zero. Well, we got unlucky with the cold snap through Tallinn.
I think so. Yeah.
But that said, one of the things that struck me about Tallinn, we met a guy called Silva who worked in a shop.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And we had earlier that day come out of one of our favorite museums. There is a series of tunnels. You want to tell them about it?
Yeah, so we just went to the Bastion tunnels in Estonia, and it just blew my mind. Just how many times it was these tunnels were repurposed for all different things, all throughout Soviet occupation, and helping people who were homeless, and then all the different eras. And so, we want to share that excitement. And also just
So where are these tunnels? Are they in the middle of nowhere, in the outskirts?
No, they're central, in the city centre. You can't miss it at all.
They're under the main square, right? Yeah. You come out and you're standing at the main square.
Yeah, exactly. So we thought to ourselves, surely this young Estonian would know, we could share excitement together. But then what did he say?
And by the way, this was a clued-in guy. He gave us his views on Estonia, how it was different and similar to Latvia, Lithuania, the difference in politics. He was an engaged person, right? And he had never been to these tunnels. But not only that, he didn't know what these tunnels were, and we thought, okay, maybe there's a mistranslation here. They call it something different. Yeah, so we get out photos.
Yeah, you got out the photos. You're like, oh no, it's this, it's the tunnels. And he just looks at you. He's like, where's that?
He's never seen them.
No.
He thought it was just a car park.
Yeah, he was like, oh yeah, car park. And they're like, no, it's not a car park at all. You should go visit. We've been here for 3 days and you've been here your entire life.
Yeah, but this is endemic of like the underappreciation, I think. And it's not his fault. Like, as I said, he's a very well articulate, educated guy. Shout out to Sylvie. If you watch this channel, like and subscribe. But it was striking just how like we had pride in what the Estonians had accomplished there, and it was just taking us back. Like, there's no way that an equivalent like that could happen in Australia of that scale. Like,
it's like going like to Sydney, from Sydney, like I've never heard of the Opera House. I've never heard of the Harbour Bridge. Yeah, it's like in the centre.
Yeah, it's possible to have never gone to these places.
Yes.
Like, you'll find Australians that don't travel much or aren't interested in the big things, but they will definitely be able to talk about them as if they're real things. And if you showed them pictures, they'll be like, that's the Opera House, that's the Harbour Bridge. But yeah, this is a strange, eerie experience, actually.
But that's also what I thought to myself, like, oh, like if I was a young person, I lived here my life, like, I mean, in Australia, there's so many places that tourists go to that I've never been. I kind of know, I have an idea, but I've never gone there. So it kind of makes sense. And if you don't have international recognition, sometimes you don't value it as much. You know, people get excited about, I don't know, all these different like islands and all these different places, like random rocks in the middle of nowhere. They get excited and they go, and then you're like, okay. But until you kind of get that like excitement, like international recognition, you don't really see the value at all. And I think that's kind of maybe a contributor. I don't know. I'm only guessing.
Yeah, perhaps that's true. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that struck us about that particular museum, and Charlene had emphasised this in particular, I didn't think about it till after, is that not only is the construction and maintenance of these tunnels impressive, but the fact that they've been adapted through all these different eras. As you progress through the museum, it starts like early on when they were built, and then the various ways they've been used. And it took a high degree of creativity, I think, to keep them relevant. In that
I love the audio guides. Oh my gosh, like, world-class museum when you have an audio guide and you just like immerse in that moment. And then like weaving in like personal stories, and you just feel like you're there in that historic moment. And like you're just looking at rocks, right? But they're interesting rocks.
And Charlene did something that was very brave. So one of the things that was very striking for me was how many Russian speakers there were in Estonia. Now, I knew this on paper, but when you're actually like listening for it, as I was doing, because, you know, obviously things are happening in Ukraine and so on, it was everywhere. You know, Russian speaking was everywhere. We had many interactions speaking with Russian speakers. And one of the big churches in Tallinn, of course, is the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. Certainly the largest Orthodox cathedral in the Baltic countries. And the church service was on, and we thought, okay, well, Charlene has not seen the inside of an Orthodox church with the icons or the facade. And so we went in. Now, they have a rule that men are not allowed to wear head coverings, but women really must, right? And so I went in and I looked in the shop to see if there was anything appropriate. And there wasn't anything for under like 70 euros. It was a proper scarf. So I found this thing that was in plastic and it looked appropriate. And so I was like, okay, bought that. It was fairly cheap, and I brought it out and Charlene put it on. And what was it?
It looked ridiculous. It was like this white lace bib. I thought it was a bib, but it's actually like a headdress thing that's for babies. Like legit though. I look ridiculous. And then like Chris was like, quick, just put it on and just don't move, because he didn't know what it was. So yeah, I go in and I'm like being so serious, but I was like, I'm dying here.
It was pretty good.
Oh my
It was pretty. It was, but
gosh.
no, I think the attendees.
Did I sell it? Hopefully I did.
Oh, you did. I think the attendees saw that you really tried, and that's the main thing with just about any sort of cultural issue. So that was great. And met some, and Charlene made a point of asking every single person we met, whether they were sort of taxi drivers or wait staff or people, helping give us directions, what they thought of Estonia, what they liked about Estonia. So that was really, great to see. She kind of forced this engagement, and I gave her the warning as well that before we went, that everyone, of course, is extremely tall in the Baltic countries.
Oh, they're so tall, but they're taller than you, mate. So you feel intimidated too.
well, no, I mean it's look, I'm used to it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like they're above average in height, of course, and I'm fairly normal Australian.
Are you going to share the museum story, the art museum story?
Yes. So we went to the Photografia location. I've probably mispronounced it. It's actually really good. It's and it's in a nice sort of trendy area of Tallinn. It was nice because we got out of the normal kind of space.
Yeah.
And we went up to buy tickets.
Oh my gosh, we went to buy tickets. And then the lady was like, student? Teacher? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, I've been getting this all over the place. Because Charlene obviously looks young. The people in the Baltic aren't used to kind of the different Asian groups. So for all you guys and girls at home, Asian years work different. All right.
Yeah, very much.
Women who are Asian look 12 until menopause, okay? And
they just don't change at all.
And then they catch up, right? Whereas, Europeans have a nice, steady kind of snail tortoise wins the race kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the Asians are definitely the heirs of the world.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Just because someone who's Asian looks young doesn't mean that they are young. However,
yeah, I've been missing like the age thing is huge. But anyway, I'd like to know what people think of how old I am. But as we go through the museum, all these different cool photographs and pretty cool stuff. And then we saw like a group. We knew were students because all like coming together and like following along. We're like, oh, cool, like there's a school here, and I really wanted to know like whether like university, college. I want to know if they're what they're studying because I'm just nosy. So I go up to one of them and I was like, "Hi, like, are you here?"
And they were way taller than her as well.
Like,
They were like, right.
They were like so much taller than me, and I was like, "Hello." Like I'm Charlene. Like, are you on a trip? And it's like, I'm like, we're schools. Like, yeah. Oh, like universities? Like, no, high school. I'm like, oh, high school. Everyone was taller than me, like every single person. So at that point, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and this kept coming up all the time. Like, we went to a restaurant, and Charlene's trying to order like the wine.
Yes, I was like, I want rosé, and he's like, okay, got it. And he like turns the menu pages. I'm like, because it's a very big menu. Turns the menu pages, and then like turns to soft drinks. And then like soda, and then just goes like smiles at me as like, here you go. And I'm like, rosé. As I flip the page.
And all like the staff, like in pretty much everywhere we go, they'll speak to me, right? And at first you think it's like a gender thing, like you're sort of taking someone out, but then I realized no, they think I'm like looking after someone.
Too much.
Therefore, I have to. So, and then all of a sudden, Charlene starts making the decisions, right? Like, no, we're going to do this and do this and this. And they're just absolutely taken aback.
The only person that was like got my age quite close was somebody we were on the train, and they were also Asian. Yeah. So they were able to distinguish.
Yes. Oh. And people in Australia, I think, are much better at it now because Australians, like a significant percentage of the Australian population originates in Asia. And even those that don't, we have a large transient Asian population of students, of tourists. And so I can distinguish with a fairly high degree of accuracy, although I can think of a couple of friends back home who dispute this, but a high degree of accuracy where in Asia people are from, whereas I think in Europe, which doesn't have that exposure, they just do things at face value. And certainly given the height of the people in the Baltic countries, Charlene looks younger than even her otherwise youthful appearance would indicate. So that's a great experience, and we're looking forward to getting back to that when we head back in a few days. So we'll be going to Lithuania and Latvia. We're going to spend more time in Latvia because we kind of just traveled out of there. Oh, one thing we do I want to talk about before we go there, the roads. We have to have a conversation about the roads between Estonia and Latvia, because what we did was we got a bus from Tallinn down to Riga to fly out temporarily to come back. Now, on that road, we found 4 trucks upturned or horribly smashed in that 100-kilometer stretch of road. And I just thought that was absolutely unacceptable. This is traffic management at its worst. We're looking at the roads, we're looking at the barriers that were totally non-existent. We're looking at the way in which cars tried to overtake one another in the most hazardous ways.
It was definitely shocking because in Australia, our traffic, we have a big traffic management industry, right? And then also in long stretch roads, because there's a lot of country in Australia, a lot of roads have they're a lot wider, and they're built that way in order for trucks to stop over if they're tired, and then a rest stop, and then move on, and easily overtake as well. So and that was shocking because there was none of that. And then plus that if there was a crash, there would be one police here, one police there, and then that's it. Whereas if it happened in Australia, there would be cones everywhere. There'll be a huge signage. There'll be slow down, that kind of thing. So it was just, it's such night and day. And I don't know whether it's just between those two countries or whether it's a EU-wide problem.
It's not EU-wide. When I'm in West, okay, so don't get me wrong. Traffic is crazy in Western Europe. This is without question. But if in most countries, if you get a series of crashes in a period of months, let alone the same day, there is a massive change to that structure. They go, okay, we're going to put an extra lane. We're going to do all these extra things. We're going to investigate why these things happen and prevent them from happening again. But it feels like now I could be wrong about this. This is just our anecdotal experience from one day of travel, but these crashes were horrific. There was a massive truck completely upside down. There was another carriage that was just totally crushed. I don't know how or whether the driver walked away from that. And it's not necessary in this day and age. There is actual technology available to minimize the likelihood and impact of motor vehicle accidents. And it will happen. It'll always happen once in a while, but not at this scale. So I think voters in Latvia and Estonia really should get agitating about the roads and the level of vehicle accidents. I will do a video once I've done research on the actual level of mortality on the roads and the numbers of accidents and the types of accidents, because I think more attention needs to be brought. It's a very dull area of public policy, and everyone gets really annoyed when their roads are closed and that they have to go around roadworks and things.
But it makes a difference. It makes a difference because everyone has to travel on a road one day, and people travel by bus all the time. So it would make what's the cost of human life? A lot of road fatalities are preventable. And something that you do in daily living shouldn't be a threat to your life. We have a comment here by Archus
Archus Bondas, I think.
Okay, Archus Bondas. We have a comment from Archus Bondas, and is in response to the war crimes video in Ukraine. So he says, already 3 decades in the Baltics, we're sad that Russia can't be trusted as a reasonable partner, while others in the Western countries caught us in various bad words and comments for that. Who now is right?
Well, I mean, Artur's was right. I would have taken a slightly different view prior to this war. Like, I've changed my opinion here. I believed, or at least hoped, that we could improve relations with Russia. That
What gave you the signs that we could have done it?
Well, because there was a long period of time without conflict. So we had the Chechen conflict, which was a terrible war, though it happened in a different environment and in a different place. We had the Georgia conflict, which obviously it showed Russia's willingness to use military force to solve problems. However, in that conflict, Saakashvili did contribute to the crisis that was created, like, no doubt about that. And I actually think in that situation, the Russians were taken by surprise. Like, it wasn't like they had slowly built up their armed forces and, gave all these mixed messages and then launched a massive invasion. I don't think it happened that way. And Medvedev was in charge, and Putin did give him some rope to do that. So it was a different time and place. And I think that there was a sense in the United States that Russia was being turned into this massive threat when it never was to that degree. Like, the idea that Russia put Trump in the White House and that Russia's misinformation was dominating all Western elections, and that it was this... I mean, Russia's economy was 1/3 that of Germany, and Putin was being turned into this massive lion because of the hysteria in Washington. And I thought, look, a more sober view of Russia's policies and politics would be able to create a more credible policy format for dealing with the Russian Federation, rather than just, oh my goodness, they are the alien invaders from Mars with massively advanced technology and they were just going to take over everything. It was just insane, right? Like, the dialogue was hyperbolic and crazy. So I thought that the mistakes that we were making in the West was contributing to the problems we were having with Russia, because we weren't trying to understand Russia from a dispassionate point of view.
Right, okay.
So I think the mistakes were made. And there were actually policy mistakes made. So, for example, during the Libyan intervention, commitments were made to the Russian government that they wouldn't be about regime change of Gaddafi, that it would just be about protecting civilians, and that turned out to be completely false. So they abstained in a critical UN vote on trust that the Americans would not turn this into a regime change operation, and immediately reneged on that. Not even like it evolved, it happened straight away. Then there was the time that Obama put red lines in Syria about chemical weapons use, never willing to enforce those, and then had to be bailed out by the Russians, who negotiated with the Syrian government to get these weapons removed, to save Obama's political hide. And I don't think the Russians got the credit for that in the West that they deserve. So there were things that we were doing that were in error when it came to respecting the Russians and dealing with them as honest negotiators, without making them friends, without making concessions on Baltic security or anything like that, just being honest with them.
Yeah. And then how has your attitudes changed?
Well, yes. I mean, the Vladimir Putin, he has done like a terrible miscalculation as well as a humanitarian crime in invading Ukraine.
Yeah.
And had he invaded the Baltic countries, the countries that I, obviously adore and this channel is about, I almost would have respected it more for this reason, right? That the Baltic countries are NATO countries, and therefore if Russia invaded the Baltic countries, the whole argument that it's NATO's expansion that is threatening Russia and that Russia has to respond would at least have some credibility. But Russia wasn't going to do that because they're not actually brave. They're bullies. They're trying to hurt countries that can't stand up for themselves, that don't have major backing from
Yeah.
Western military powers. And Russia wasn't willing to have a showdown with the United States for the sake of NATO expansion. It turned out to be a complete fraud. So although they talk about NATO expansion as being the cause, they're attacking a non-NATO country, a country that I don't think was going to join NATO anytime soon, if for no better reason that the most of the NATO countries didn't want Ukraine in the alliance, and Russia knew this. The other thing is that Russia has this spectacular misinformation, propaganda operation. I remember when the MH17 plane went down, and obviously shot down by a Buk missile provided by the Russians, and Russians weren't going to do anything about it. In the Russian press, what was leading was this idea that the Dutch had filled a plane with dead people, flew it over Ukraine and shot it down to embarrass the Russians and make them look bad, right? You can look this up. I am not making this up. You know, as Jon Stewart, the comedian, said, you know, the world's florists decided to put people on a plane just to make the Russians look bad. I mean, it was just so beyond the pale insane. So that kind of mentality, that siege mentality in Russia, made them very hard to deal with. And I had hope.
Why can't they just own up to what they want to do? Like, why can't they just be fully transparent? Like, this is what we're doing.
Russians could admit anything but weakness. Like that's the crux of it. Like, so for example, the leading cause of death for Russian men is alcohol poisoning, really. And if you point this out, the denials just come out. Like, but for what reason? What are you trying to protect? You know, like, it's just the truth. How are you gonna, if you can't admit the truth and you can't own it, you know, take responsibility, how are you meant to get better? Isn't that a Russian attitude as well? To work on your weakness, like. Yeah, but I really, actually, look, I did believe it was possible to improve relations with Russia prior to this, because the Western mistakes, particularly the US, like, dialogue about Russia was obviously hyperbolic and crazy. With that corrected, I thought, okay, if the deals that we made with Russia were always stuck to properly when it comes to, you know, UN resolutions, etc., then I thought, okay, it would be okay. And also that deep down in the Russian soul, and I still believe this actually, that deep down in the Russian soul, they don't want to be China's slave in the 21st, 22nd, 23rd century, which is what they're going to be if they wed themselves to Beijing forever, right? They're always going to be the junior partner. Whatever Xi Jinping says is going to be what goes. And so I thought, because of this, they would rather be part of the victorious West, the culture to which they are more akin, and defeat China if given the opportunity. But there wasn't really much space for them to do so because of the craziness that was going on in Washington. That said, I was never in the camp that like the John Mearsheimer camp, who man who I actually, you know, admire from a political theory point of view. He's a good academic. I was never in the John Mearsheimer camp that it was all our fault, or that we were making all the mistakes ourselves, and, you know, the expansion of NATO was pushing Russia into this corner. No, I think that there were things that the Russian government were doing, like the MH17, like, you know, other forms of aggression that were contributing, of course, to the problem, and that what they were telling their own people. But Putin has gone off the deep end now, and one of the many tragedies of Bucha and what's going on in Mariupol and other places is that there is no way we can deal with the Russian government as a potential partner for the foreseeable future. That means that they will be in China's corner because they have no other friends. And that means that as China becomes the predominant threat to the international world order, they will have a dependable, subordinate, pliable ally on their northwestern periphery, able to cause trouble in Europe and distract the Europeans while they focus on Taiwan. So it's a strategic disaster, not just for Russia, which has failed utterly in Ukraine in all kinds of ways, but also for us when we're trying to deal with the China menace.
And then what's, like, the best resolve, like, of, like, my ideal mind is, like, peace proposal, but probably not now. Yeah, like, it feels so far removed. I still have hope. Like, what is best resolve? So Russia pull back?
Yes, this is what you've thrown up there is absolutely the case. Like, how can a Ukrainian government settle for anything other than the complete destruction of the Russian armed forces?
Yeah.
I mean, and then the biggest embarrassment here, as always, is Germany, which is trying to sort of say, well, we can make a peace deal and so forth.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the gas lines open. I'm just like, why?
Yeah, at this point, there's really no prospect of that. And coming back to Artur's comment, he was right. The Baltic countries were right. Russia has proven to be all the worst things that everyone thought them to be because of Putin's actions. And that means that the rest of the international community will rightly build up their military forces in the east of NATO. Finland is going to join NATO by the summer, at the rate at which the politics is moving there. That will extend Russia's border with NATO by another 1,300 kilometres, increase NATO's military requirements in the east, and massively increase Russia's threat perception. So all of this disaster Putin has brought upon himself, but it also has long-term problems for us because we would prefer a Russia that was more friendly, more respectable, more open, and more reliable to partner with us when it comes to dealing with China. But that's not possible. But in terms of Ukraine, this war is going to continue for the foreseeable future because Russia's crimes make an honourable peace short of the complete and utter defeat of the Russian Federation kind of untenable. And if you can't offer the Russians anything, any incentive, then they're going to keep fighting. Yeah. And so the only option is to win the war, which I do think we will do. And that's the best thing I can say.
So when you win the war, does that just mean hold the cities and until they kind of run out of armed forces? Okay, to be honest, it's like the first war in like decades that I've kind of seen my own eyes. So I'm just not familiar with what we mean by win the war.
That's a great point. No, look, what is a victory condition? And look, so many military disasters, Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on, have been because these things have been ill-defined. Winning the war means, I think, the complete removal of Russian armed forces from Ukraine, at a minimum, without any territorial concessions, i.e., Russia be kicked out of Donetsk, Luhansk, and probably Crimea. Russia is never going to willingly surrender Crimea, which Russia believes is part of Russia, like an integral part of Russia. Yeah. And thus, Ukraine is going to keep fighting. And as this goes on, it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the European countries do in terms of Ukraine's status. So is it going to be part of NATO? Is it going to be part of the European Union? Many of countries are supporting their application for the European Union. Certainly the Baltic countries are, Poland. The military forces, it just came out today via Tutus, one of our contributors shared with me an announcement that the Ukrainian military forces are being trained in Lithuania. So this is fast becoming kind of a regional conflict. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility that other countries could be drawn in a more direct way. Yeah. And things could deteriorate. Certainly, if Russia decides to attack the Baltic countries directly, then Russia will face utter defeat because they are no match for NATO as a whole. But if the Western allies upgrade its support to Ukraine in such a manner that it becomes indistinguishable from being a normal combatant, then that will put Russia in a vexing situation, whether to escalate with, say, nuclear, or do something potentially, in a NATO country, or they will face utter defeat. I think that as the backbones of the Western NATO countries increase and their risk tolerance for supporting Ukraine gets ever greater, then we will find a situation where the Russians are just defeated militarily on the battlefield. And I think that will take some time. I do think we're actually going to get there, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, it's definitely taken longer than I ever expected, to be honest.
Yes. Well, I mean, look, everyone has been surprised. Everybody has been surprised by the tenacity of the Ukrainian defenders. So they have held cities that they had no right to hold. Kharkiv in the east, Russia had every military advantage. It was close to Russia's border, military supply lines, no natural barriers, element of surprise, you name it. Kharkiv, I would have perhaps thought that Kharkiv needed to be abandoned, right? And just like bring all the forces back to Kiev, to the west and the west of the Dnieper River. But no, the Ukrainians have held out successfulely, and the Russians have been utterly frustrated. Now, the Russians have responded with ever more destructive and indiscriminate weapons, almost as punishment. One of the things we could attribute to the Bucha massacre is Russia's deteriorating view of the Ukrainians as fellow Slavs, fellow compatriots, what this whole war was supposedly about. Now they're seeing Ukrainians as a genuine enemy, and that is going to create, a greater sense of ferocity, a dehumanization in the conflict. But certainly the ability of Ukraine to hold on to these critical locations has now pushed this into a new phase. Russia has lost so much, military hardware and troops and suppliers that the Ukrainians are now able to run massive counteroffensives. They've captured more armored vehicles than they've lost in the conflict. So Ukraine is arguably even in a better position militarily than they were at the start. And so Ukraine can actually push Russia back on all kinds of fronts. And this war could move from being a purely defensive structure to defend the major urban areas to being an open battlefield. The biggest determinants is whether Ukraine gets access to and the training in advanced anti-aircraft weapons. If they get like the Patriot missile system, if they get other S-300s and so forth, as they are, if they're able to shoot down high-level advanced Russian aircraft at large numbers, then the biggest vulnerability Ukraine has to operating in the open, i.e. going across flat terrain, being shot from the air, is then removed, meaning that the Ukrainians could actually just straight up win in the battlefield. And the humiliation for Putin and the Russian regime at that point would be amazing to behold. And I honestly can't wait to see that happen.
For sure. Okay. I want to share something. This light is kind of like shining on you. And you look really pale. So I'm going to... Oh, you're just as pale. No.
Yeah, so Charlene has just taken a break to try and make my lighting, because of course the sun is moving across the window. Like, at first we were so happy because we've got this beautiful landscape window, good lighting, but now it's turning me into a
snowman. Anyway,
a phase of the moon. So yeah, we are.
We're just about finished. So that's okay. I think there was anything else. Oh, yes, I want to speak about it. So we are obviously vlogging around the Baltic and Europe, my first time. And there's just like bonus content. We just don't know where to fit. So if you are a Contribee member, there will be extra videos on Contribee. So have a look out on that. We'll link it down below. There's one where Crispin embarrassed himself and I embarrassed myself. So...
That's great. Yeah. And there's like funny shorts, and there'll be other more serious content in the future, I'm sure. But yes, Contribee, for those that don't know, which will be many of you, Contribee is a Lithuanian-based startup that is a Patreon alternative, where you can support our channel and support Baltic business at the same time. Yeah. I've dealt with the Contribee people. They're absolutely fantastic, and they're really driven and interesting, and I like where they're taking their companies. So good luck to them. Happy to support them in the meantime. And they're also doing a lot to support those in Ukraine. So go check out their website. We'll leave a link in the description, and you'll be able to see all the different charities and things that they help facilitating funding to those that are suffering in Ukraine. So that's great to see as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's all the time we've got for today. Any questions? You about let us down below. Yeah, you look so pale, like a ghost. Anyway, stay safe and
ciao for now.